Tell us about your shop.
Well, I opened the shop a little over 2 years ago. I was working in Toronto in harm reduction in a different area, and was getting a little burnt out doing social work, so I came to Ottawa and decided to start something new. I quit after 15 years with vaping, so I wanted to give the opportunity to do the same for other people. And over the course of the last 2 years, I expected kind of to be working on my own 6 days a week or 5 days a week. Now we have 4 or 5 staff here regularly.
How important is vaping then to the stop smoking effort?
Well, as somebody that was kind of skeptical of vaping when I started, I went through all the alternatives. I went first to my doctor and tried Zyban. Basically, I was just high for a month. I didn't renew my prescription. I got mood swings. It was awful. I tried nicotine inhalers, the patch. But also I found like a lot of fidgeting, chewing, eating junk food, and that wasn't healthy. And when I exhausted all options, I had a friend who had started a small website, and I thought, oh, I'll buy a kit from him for those nights where I go and smoke more than I would normally. I'll substitute with vaping. And then within 5 days, I didn't even crave a cigarette.
When you're in the shop and you're dealing with first timers that are coming in, what are you communicating to them in terms of the viability, the options that are here with vaping?
I've instructed staff to speak only from personal experiences and the experiences that other people share with us. None of us are doctors, so we don't make medical claims. I just share my story. If people relate to that, they opt to give it a try. I let them know that this is a harm reduction. I don't foresee or promote it as a harm-free substitute, but certainly it's a better and healthy alternative than smoking traditional tobacco cigarettes. And so we just convey that to the customer. Usually it starts with a consultation, and then once we let them try out a few different styles of vaping and they select a kit, we usually sit down with them and spend about 20 minutes walking through how to set it up, how to take care of it, how to clean it, proper battery use and storage, etc. And then usually we let them know there's an ongoing process, and they just come back whenever they need support.
Here you are, your shop is in the heart of the nation's capital. Right now, politicians and bureaucrats from Health Canada are going through the new federal vaping regulations. What do you think of those regulations, and how are they going to impact your business and smokers in Canada?
As someone that's worked with policymaking in the past, I was pretty excited initially at the thought of having regulations. Regulations, despite what some might say, I think regulations overall are a positive idea. I think it can standardize and regulate an industry. But I do feel that in the case of Bill S5, that they're kind of overstepping. There's a lot of doors that I think are intentionally left wide open. They say they don't want to ban flavors, but the language in the bill makes it very clear that they would have the authority and the power to do that. And I think for me, as a taxpayer, aside from being a business owner, as a taxpayer, it scares me that they're infringing on my rights to a healthy alternative and a harm reduction approach. And we know very well that smoking causes cancer and heart disease. I was asthmatic for the 15 years I smoked. I immediately stopped using asthma medication when I started vaping. I can't say for certain that there's a correlation, but I noticed that I definitely felt a lot better. And so when I see governments who support really good initiatives like safe injection sites, which are basically harm reduction, nobody suggests that it means it's a good idea to use drugs, but the people that are addicted to some kind of drug need the safest possible harm reduction alternative. And vaping is that. And so removing people's access to vaping, whether it be through banning supplies and products like some countries have done, or even just restricting access to flavors, you're making it more probable that there will be Canadians that continue to smoke because of the legislation. And I think that's what needs to be made the most clear.
Do you think they're being fair to vaping?
No, not at all. I think there are some responsible and important parts of legislation. I do believe that in the same way that you have to be 19 in Ontario to buy cigarettes, I think you should be 19 to walk into a vape shop and buy vape products. I think packaging should have child-proof components to make sure that you're limiting access to obviously to kids and that sort of thing. And I also think there's a strong role in educating vapers to make sure that they know that pets and children should not be around vaping supplies with nicotine. But there are some very irresponsible parts of regulation. I myself am 37 years old. If I feel like vaping a juice that tastes like gummy bears or cannolis because I don't enjoy the taste of tobacco, that's what got me off cigarettes. I tried tobacco products. I tried tobacco flavored e-juice. I tried menthol flavored e-juice. I went through a series of fruits And for me, gummy bears and cannoli works, and it keeps me off cigarettes. And so limiting my access to certain flavors, or even marketing to me about those flavors so that I can purchase them, that's a scary thought to me. I will likely be someone that vapes forever. It's also, part of what I do as a living. But I think there's no one solution to everybody. In the same way that some people quit using the patch after 3 months, and some people have been using them for a couple of years, right? It's the addiction to nicotine is not the problem. It's the method that we choose to ingest or take in the nicotine that's causing all the harmful effects.
Let me ask you about the no comparisons clause that's currently right now in the draft regulations as they are, and that's you're not going to be able to compare at all in emissions, anything about the vaping product to a combustible cigarette. What do you think about that no comparison section in the regulations?
Again, as somebody that's been around a lot of policymaking in the past, that tells me that big tobacco and big pharma have a heavy hand in lobbying the government. There's no reason why a government shouldn't be seeking really good scientific evidence. It's one thing to have subjective comparisons and someone sort of ad hoc saying, I like this better. But having academics and scientists not be able to say, this particulate is safer to ingest than this particulate, that's scientific fact. And when you're regulating the transmission and creation of knowledge of academic sources, that's the basis of any kind of free society to do what's best for the public. And muzzling scientists are something that I never ever thought could happen in Canada.
And yet it's happening right now in Quebec, just across the bridge.
It is indeed, and it's a real tragedy. There's, and I understand sort of marketing standpoint from putting a very child-friendly image on a billboard outside is one thing, but when you're a shop owner and you can't, for example, if someone comes in and says, "Is vaping safer? Yes or no?" I will generally say, hey, if you go online, there's some very good academic peer-reviewed journal articles. The Royal College of Physicians has some really great scientific research. If I was in Quebec right now, I couldn't even have that document to show you. And if I was in a university, I can give that out freely. So why is it that if I'm a vape shop employee in Quebec, I can't do the same thing? So I think there needs to be some clarification, and if they're going to ban what I would see as scientific fact, that's a very dangerous precedent to set.
I would imagine a lot of Canadians, if they're just tuning into this, would be shocked to hear that information is being banned.
Well, I try to educate a lot of customers as they come in and ask about it, but for the most part, people are either in complete disbelief or they think, oh, it's not going to be as bad as we think. I have nurses, doctors, lawyers, police officers, and frankly, politicians that walk through my shop on a regular basis vaping. And so for legislation that is essentially preventing us from telling people that we have a method that is less harmful than cigarettes and could save your life, I think it's not only illegal, but I think it's against my rights as a Canadian. I have a legal right, as set forth by the Supreme Court, to access to harm reduction approaches to face addiction.
Lastly, if you had an opportunity to talk to the policymakers at Health Canada, what's your message for?
My biggest message is to really think critically. In Canada, we've had some really great politicians in the past, particularly around healthcare and health initiatives that have dealt with a lot of serious issues, and they've generally came out on a more sensible approach comparatively to other countries. And what I want politicians to do is to really think critically about your friends and family who are currently addicted to cigarettes, the likelihood of them contracting cancer as a result of smoking. And instead of thinking about what seems to be a trend within party circles or around Senate tables, think about your asthmatic grandmother. Think about your daughter who is 16 starting to smoke cigarettes. And what would you like them to have access to in order to quit? And just do what you're supposed to do, and just put the people of Canada first.